Hi everyone, it's Stella and that's Tarrant from Meeple University. Welcome to our vlog of July, which we talk about
June.
Yes, games that we played
This
in
is
June. Well, Tarrant is really good at remembering rules and explaining rules, but he could not remember what month we are on usually.
At least I changed the calendar on the 1st, or as soon as I see them. When it's over there, your calendar probably still is on June.
I would never change the calendar, flip the calendar, because I know that Tarrant is going to change it for me. That's a secret. Shh.
It's one of those things that annoys me. Calendars are not wall art. You have to change them month to month. You can't just get attached to one particular month's picture and leave it there forever.
But I love the
allowed.
picture. This is a custom-made photos of our travel, and I like that picture.
Yeah, but there's another one in the... Anyway, this is not why you tuned in.
No, but welcome.
Please stay, those of you who've clicked away.
Yeah, we're really bad at this sometimes. We just like chatting. So we are going to talk about eventually our top games of June. So we received this game from a review copy. We've been commissioned to do it, but they all are new to us. The game not necessarily new to you, but it's new to us. And also let us know what's your highlights, what's your games that you play. Maybe you have played some of the games that we're going to show you. I promise not all of them are not Kickstarter or not available to be
Many of these are available. Many of this little stack that I'm looking at, that's off. If I occasionally look at it, that's
yes,
over there.
That was over there. So yeah. And I've been to a convention called PlayOn, which is in Sydney. The first one of the biggest one by Boardgame Barbecue, which is really great content creator. They mainly do podcasts. There are 9 of them. I did some odd questions interview for some of the designers that I met there, like Phil Walker-Harding, Sam McDonald, Matt Dunstan, Chris Anthony, and Bobby Hill. So all odd questions and an interview for all the Boardgame Barbecues. They're really short. They're not too long, but it took me 2 days to edit because there's a lot of cuts and stuff. Hopefully you'll see it and then let me know if you like it, that sort of style.
And that is very much the who's who of Antipodean board game industry. That's a lot of
Antipode what?
Australian and New Zealand
Yes.
board gaming. So that's a lot of the bigwigs all there in one go.
Yeah, it's great playing game, and they're gonna have it again hopefully next year. This is not the first board game day or convention, but this is the biggest one that they have. They usually have it in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, which is the cities of Australia. That's where we are. If you hear the first time, hey, we went from Australia. So I'll definitely recommend that if you are in Australia. It's really fun, and I met also content creators like Amy and Maggie from Thinkathema, Emily from Shut Up and Sit Down, Danny from Board Game Sanctuary, and so on. Tarrant missed out though. Tarrant couldn't get time off work, but hopefully next year.
Which is all right. I've got my time off work in anticipation of Essen later on in the year.
Yes, but today we have to go through Gen Con first, which I'm very excited that I will be going to Gen Con. Hopefully I will see you there. And this is going to be, I'll be there from Wednesday until Monday. So I'm going to be there a long and fun time. Fun and long? Yeah. Let's talk about games.
Let's talk about games. Let's talk about the new to us games from June, each of our top 5s. We did play a lot of games in June, particularly at WellyCon, which we went to over in New Zealand, but we did play a number of them were half plays on prototypes. So those aren't really, they don't really qualify.
Yeah, and that's kind of like a demo, but I'm liking the demo of The Anarchy and Shadow Moon Syndicate, which is, publisher is Arcus Games, but the designer is Jared or Jay from 3 Minute Board Games. And he's in New Zealand and he started design games, and this one I really enjoy, so I can't wait to see the production copy where we can play full game.
So we have the same number 5 for this month, and this is a prototype. This is a new game, Peaks.
Yeah, this has got lead and follow mechanics. Feels a little bit like Tiny Epic Galaxies with lead and follow, but different. So this is the one that I've done, short and sweet. Oh, by the way, if we do have other videos, we'll link it in the description below for you to check it out if you are interested. So this is by Tangerine Games, and they did Nestlings as their first project. and that was picked up by Lucky Duck Games. And this is Peakstate's second game going on Kickstarter.
Yeah, it's a light to medium game. It thrives with a lot of players because ultimately, it feels relatively simple. You're moving around, you're building up resources, and then you're spending those resources to climb mountains. There's a whole lot of real-life mountains in the game. But then it has this mechanism where when you go and climb a mountain, someone else can tag along, and you don't get a choice in the matter. It's a little bit beneficial to you both, or to you all, if you tag along and climb together, because it costs less energy when people are climbing together. But
Grammatically correct.
Yeah, but it also gives you this way of muscling in behind somebody else and kind of coattail riding and getting some cheap points.
Yep.
And so it's an interesting balance there. There's a whole bunch of area influence where you're trying to get your flags out on the map, and there's some end game points for that. So yeah, it thrives on multiple players, and because it's light and quick to pick up, it's pretty good that way.
Yeah, well, I might have done the spoiler, what I like about it, that lead and follow. And also the engine building part is very satisfying on your own player board. So you can upgrade things, so when you do rests, you gain more things. And the artwork is beautiful, like mountains and different things, like makes you feel cold. Like also thematically, like when I look at Tarrant before, and like it's really cold in here, right? This is winter in Australia, and I can see fog coming out of your mouth when you talk.
I noticed it before, yes.
It's like, I don't know if you can see it camera. I don't think you can see it in camera. Now everyone can smell you. But that's fixed.
Enjoy.
It's so mean. This is fixed. This is our number 5, both of us.
Okay, number 4 for both of us. Once again, we've got the same number 4 this month.
I mean, 4.
Number 4 is Skyrise. So this is Roxley's re-implementation of an earlier game called Metropolis.
So this is where you did auction. So we both are pretty ginger when it comes to auction. If you watch our PlayCon interview with Phil O'Harding, his favorite mechanics is auction. Sorry, what he's good at is auction, because this, as designers, as game designers, you can probably calculate, okay, what is it worth, what is that worth, and so on. So especially me, I'm like, well, I don't know if it's good or not, but this is like slightly different auctions. You only have limited numbers that you can use.
Yeah, it's a spatial auction. So you will be placing buildings down. You're trying to ultimately place buildings onto a map and place them in the most beneficial way to meet some objectives, to make clusters, to do all those sorts of good map types of things. So you'll be placing a building, and the next player can overbid it with a building that's taller, but it has to go adjacent to the previously placed building. So you make this chain, and then once nobody overbids, the tallest building gets placed, all the others come off the board. So you end up in this interesting sequence of trying to position yourself in strategic places on the map through this auction mechanism. And if you go really hard early on, then you don't have many pieces left to bid later. It can be harder to get your pieces out later. And so, yeah, it's a different sort of game. You don't see that very often.
Trying to place your building or trying to hold on to your high piece, like, okay, what is it worth to me? Do you want me to hold on to this piece and then place it there, or you want to wait? Or you want to try to drive the game to a certain corner where no one else can bid that or something like that, and then only you can place it. So very strategic there. And the building's great. So they've got like standard and deluxe edition. We played it at WellieCon as well, I believe. Yes. So that was really fun.
Yeah. And I will say it feels old. You know, sometimes, like the original version came out, I think it was around 2008. And you can feel it's not of that modern era. You can feel it comes from a time where board game rules could be a bit more brutal and have less square ups and things like that. It has that little old world feel. And I like playing games from the late noughties, because they do have that slightly different and sometimes a little more brutal vibe about them.
Yeah, yeah.
Or a little more of a, hey, here's our rules, now let's find ways to exploit them. So, no, it's a good one for them to have picked back up and re-released.
Love it. The difference is that, though, the artwork would not look like Splotter games. So, sorry. Sorry, Splotter. I love Splotter games. Yes.
But your art is terrible, and you know it.
And let's move on to the next game. My number 3 is Cities. Remember, we talked about Phil Walker Harding, and this is a Phil Walker Harding game by Daybreak Games. I think Phil Walker Harding's known for is like simplicity with a lot of layers of strategy, which this one is. So you draft different elements that you want to build your city. Like you get the building, you have the tiles, you have the objectives, and you draft it one person at a time. And you can have a maximum bid on certain rows. So and then you build your city, you meet the objectives. It sounds quite straightforward, but it plays elegantly.
Yeah, it's one of those. So it's one of those games where, for example, you've got the 4 city blocks and the 4 sets of buildings, and you can worker placement drafting. So you can pick your row in whichever order you want, but you end up having to get 1 of each row per round, or 2 of each if it's a 2-player game. And most of the points come from these objective cards. So it's not a set of common. There's a couple of common objectives, but most of your points, you're picking up what you're going to score from. You'll end up with these 8 objective cards, and that will drive a lot of your points.
Plus, there are different cities each game that you can use. So like New York, even Sydney, because Phil Walker Harding lives in Sydney, so there's Sydney. I mean, we have the only Australian city in there, although it's Sydney. Boo, Sydney. Well, there's always like, what do you call it, like rivalry between Melbourne and Sydney.
Yes, there is great parochialism between them. Sydney has an opera house, yeah, sure, it looks good on an illustration, but we all know where we'd rather live.
Love cities. There's also set collection. There's different objectives. You're trying to achieve lots of objectives with your placement and so on. So really recommend it.
So we come to number 3 for me and number 2 for you.
Yeah.
So we both have this one on our list. This is Bedouin's new game, Rise of Babel. And this is a game that mixes a competitive tile placement competition. We're trying to build the Tower of Babel together, and you're trying to get your resources down in certain patterns. But the engine that's driving it is a deck building engine.
Yeah, love it. And art is by Andrew Bosley. And this is their second game that is, I think, currently on Kickstarter.
So it is it's a very conventional, 5-card, start with 10 cards, 5-card hand deck building type of game. So, full Dominion style deck building, but then really the major things you're trying to drive out of those cards, you could either got things that'll generate points, or you're trying to make combos to get your resources onto the tower.
Yep.
And the way you score those resources, it feels relatively restrictive because you have to get certain resources in certain patterns. So it means you do need to chase these big Dominion style combos where you're getting lots of money at once, delivering lots of things at once, so you can get them all down in a great point scoring way, as well as trying to block off your opponents from getting that really high scoring combinations.
What's good for me as well, this deck building part, instead of doing a lot of thrashing, it's focusing on drawing more things from your deck. So I always have trouble on which one I want to trash. Oh, of course the bad one, the first cards you want to trash, but those first cards are still good. You can still combo it. And there are cards, Tarrant said that you need to put your pieces onto the board. Those pieces, as you uncover them as well on your board, you build your engine. And then there are different ways of putting your pieces on the main board. And there's the long way with your elephant, and there's also the shortcut way straight away from your board to there. You have to just manage there as well. There's very clever mechanics there.
Yeah. And there's just a couple of things where, one thing I quite like, which really brings that game alive, is there's a couple of moments where you can hold resources back and then spend them for that one extra gold. And it feels relatively expensive, but if you hold them back for just that right moment and play it at the right time, it's going to be worth a lot to you. So I think that's a really nice little feature that makes it a very fun and playable game.
For sure. Check out Rise of Babel.
And so we come to my number 2.
And my number 1. Daybreak. This game was nominated for 2024 Kennerspiel des Jahres, and this is by Matt Leacock. Is he the only one? I think there's another
And
person.
Matteo Menepes.
Thank you.
So
Sorry, Matthew.
working there together. So it's a Matt Leacock. It's a cooperative game. He's very well known for them over really a couple of decades, and it's another good one here.
The two things that I love about it, but I'll let Tarrant explain the mechanics first.
So the game is based on attempting to essentially reach net zero, reverse global warming, that sort of thing. And you've got, in a typical of pandemic and those sorts of games, which Leacock's been very involved with before, you're trying to fight several fires, trying to keep things going along and trying to meet your objective, because the later you leave it, the more things are going to escalate. In this case, the more global crises are going to happen, and the further it's going to drag you backwards as you think you're building your engine to try to go forwards, but it's dragging you backwards with worse and worse game effects.
Well, I said two things I love about it. Means like the two most things that I love about it. Number one is the mechanic of card playing. So it's driven by card play, where you play something on your tableau, and it's a multi-use card. You can use it to pay some cost, or you can build it on your tableau so that the card on the front of it is the action where you can activate that, but the cards like behind it, that's build up icons, which is also kind of like set collection that makes that main action more powerful. And you have limited slots. I think it's 5 slots in there. We did have to play video for that as well. So there's only 5 slots of action that you can build up, and there are way more than 5 different actions that you really need to win this game. So there are times you need to sacrifice the engine that you already built for something else when the time is right. So that's my first thing that I love about it. The second one is each crisis and each card has got QR code that you can scan, and this relates to information in real life about the global crises or environmental things in the world, like the trees, the pollution, everything else that you can find there. So it's also educational, and it's real.
Yeah, and there's a little bit in the rulebook about how the game was inspired by trying to do a similar thing to what Terraforming Mars does, where it has all of these cards that it's got lots of tags, lots of icons and lots of mechanics, but they all feel very thematically valid. So it's as simple as doing reforestation and it creates a tree, or it's trying to like decarbonize the transport industry, for example, and you remove some dirty transport tokens, but it also increases the energy demand of your society because many of these alternatives are higher in energy costs, and so you need more centralized green power plants to handle them. And so it does all of this icon matching in a very sensible and realistic way. And as a Euro gamer, when I like theme, it's when the mechanics, it can still be a bland kind of Euro thing, but when the mechanics really are true to that theme, it's something I quite like. And this one has, it's got this clever, right down to the characters you play or the world powers you play. You've got
countries.
You can play as Europe or the US or China or the rest of the world, and they're not all the same. The rest of the world's demand for energy is growing much faster than Europe's is, and that's true to life, and it's true to the overall challenge that the game is looking at. So I think they've woven all of that in really well to a game that's also very mechanically fun to play.
That is why it's number one. And with pandemic, you sometimes want to play with the right people, because otherwise somebody will take control of everything, alpha player. But for this one, it's probably a little bit too hard for alpha player. I have not played Daybreak with an alpha player, so I probably wouldn't know, but I could imagine it's a bit hard to control everything because there's a lot of information, a lot of cards.
There is a lot of information. It's not quite Spirit Island level complexity, but it does you do have your own area you're playing with a little bit of interaction. So we come to my number one game for June, and that is Terminus. So this is a Euro that was recently fulfilled off crowdfunding by Inside Up Games. And I really enjoy this. This is a Euro that has the type of decisions that I really like. So it has I guess you'd call it a rondel, unlimited advancement rondel. So there's 6 spaces on this rondel, and each space has a number of different actions that you can choose to do with it. And each round, you're going to do 3 laps of the rondel. How fast you move is your choice. And there's many games like that, but this one introduces some really clever, hard decisions on how far you advance, because timing is so critical on every action. You begin the round with a almost fixed bunch of money that you get from income, and all of the resources that you buy around the track are market-based. So you need to try to buy them as low as possible, or you're not going to get as many resources. And so that thing, if you know, all right, I only have this much money, I need that, and that may force you to advance quickly and skip the potential to take other actions. And to me, that, it hits that Agricola level where you're trying to work out what's the best time to take an action when you don't think someone else is going to do it. The market element here is exactly like that. Then you go to a map. So we're building trains. Everyone loves building trains, don't they? I certainly love building trains. And you're trying to build these routes around on this map, and the routes are limited space, so they can get taken up by other players if you don't get in there early enough. You can build through the blocks. So it's got a grid, but then there's blocks, and you can build through the blocks, or you can build developments on those blocks and block out the tracks. And it's the combination of the developments and your stations that will score you points through a number of objectives.
Tarrant loves train games.
Yeah. And the game really forces you to build gradually across the course of the game. You never have enough resources to build your entire network at once. And you need to get in there before someone takes the spaces that are important to you. So again, it's got those timing decisions that I really like and are at the level that I thoroughly enjoy.
That rondel part is very impressive. And you have limited amount of resources that you can have in your board, which makes it even harder to, like this resource, you have to take you need this to do this action. So which one you're going to take? You can't do everything at once. Yeah,
you can't just go and buy all of the cheap blueprints, because then you'll have none of the other resources that you need.
Yeah, there's that market element as well.
Yep. And the last thing this does, which I think is really clever, and I think when we were talking about Age of Innovation a little while back, I sort of made this comment that Terra Mystica did this really clever thing where by making it so much cheaper to build next to other players, it forces that competition, and it forces players to build where other players are. And this, not quite as aggressively, but this has that as well, because in order to build your network, every time you reach a corner of a grid, there has to be a station. It doesn't have to be yours. It can be someone else's. So being near someone else lets you build further. And when you make a connection to someone else, you both get a benefit, much like Terra Mystica. So you get some energy and the other players get coins. And so it forces that, it forces everyone to go into a similar part of the board to get the most advantage. And then, again, that introduces that timing, because if you're in close proximity, then someone might take the bit of train route that you need before you, and there's much more chance of that. So lots of really good things that make this an excellent Eurogame.
And worth mentioning, this is by Inside Up Games, which brought out Earth. So I really enjoy Earth. There's kind of like lead and follow actions in that one as well. So I kind of like positive player interaction, which I love.
A little bit of positive
Just
player.
A little bit.
This one has kind of a little bit of positive player interaction and a whole lot of competitive stuff going on.
It's like player interaction is definitely it. Like the market bit of the resources. It's like if somebody go there and then buy the whole lot of the cheap ones, you're just left with the expensive one, and then they may ruin your plan.
Yes.
And hopefully you enjoy our video. Please let us know what games you've been playing and what's your highlight. And hopefully we'll see you next time, or maybe see you at Gen Con. Bye!